Hello friends, today I'm going to show you the most combative anti-Sicilian Alapin variation. It is named after Russian master Semyon Alapin. For many years it was not held in high regards, but today it is considered to be one of the most solid and respectable anti-Sicilian openings and is being championed at very high level even by grandmasters such as Garry Kasparov, Viswanathan Anand and even Vladimir Kramnik. So let's start here. As you know, Sicilian openings E4 and C5 and then immediately C3. So friends, this is called an Alapin variation. The reason I am saying it is most combative because when black plays C5, it is very powerful move for black and it gives black a very sharp edge in the game. Here, normal replies are knight f3 or d4. So let's look at both of them. So a lot of white players don't want to play d4 because they're afraid of pawn at c5. So I would recommend them play c3, which is anti-Sicilian attack from white. It gives away all the initiative which black wants to gain from Sicilian. It's very important to get your opponent out from their comfort zone. And most importantly, white wants to take control of the center, especially this d4 square, which initially black is aiming to without sacrificing their center pawns. Here, the main line is knight f6 from black and then e5 attacking onto this knight. So knight has to move again. At the moment here, knight can go back to its starting square, but that's not a preferred option because that gives black more initiative. You cannot move the knight to either h5 or g4 because that has been controlled by the queen. Even knight to e4 is not an option because simple pawn push will attack the knight again and then you have to move back again. So the only logical square available for black for this knight is this d5 square. White has a number of options here: d4, knight f3, even g3 and bishop c4, but pawn to d4 is the main line here, where c takes d4. Now is the time for you to develop your knight. Don't worry about c takes d3 because this pawn is pinned. Otherwise, queen can take this knight for free. Black does have a few options here. Knight c6 is the one. Of course, this move gives you a slight control in the center, especially at the start of the game. Your focus should be to take your pawns out and have your minor pieces protect them. This does change in the middle and the end games though. Now white can take this pawn, c takes d4. If you look at this position, white has a complete control of the center of the board. This is no more Sicilian. It's all anti-Sicilian here. White has an option to develop all other minor pieces to their natural squares. It can be developed on c3. This bishop can come out to even c4 or even b5. Dark square bishop can also be developed on either e3, f4 or g5. All those very natural looking moves here. Second main variation where black can combat is d5 instead of knight f6. This is the main alternative for black. The usual continuation is e takes d5 where queen takes d5. A line is known as Burman defense. White also wants to control the center, so d4 can be played. If black captures it, white can recapture it with the pawn. Black can also develop his knight to f6, and white can develop his knight to f3. Black can also focus on its development, so knight c6. One little thing you notice is that b1 knight cannot be developed on its natural square, which is c3. This is because in Alapin variation, the c3 square is occupied by the pawn. So probably bishop g5 first, before you develop your knight onto the d2. But alternatively, this knight can go on to a3. Yes, it is not a natural square, but this gives the light square bishop a chance to come to c4, attacking the queen and builds the pressure on f7 pawn. It also allows white to castle on the king's side. Friends, another variation which you can see here is pawn to e6. In such position, white should simply advance his pawn to d4, where c takes d4, taking control of the center, also destroying the Sicilian effect. Definitely, white has an upper hand now, and from here, black has two options. It can bring out his knight to c6 and then knight f3. If black decides to respond with pawn to d5, where e takes d5 and e takes d5, then white can develop his knight onto c3, putting pressure onto the pawn to d5. Again, it is all about taking the initiative back from the black Sicilian defense. Any of the sharp Sicilian defense does look like this, as all of the black's minor pieces are on their starting positions. Here, black has an option to either develop his bishop to b4, and you can develop your light square bishop either on d3 or on b5. Again, just taking away Sicilian initiative from the black. So another variation which black can play here is d6, which again will be converted to the same lines which I showed you earlier. Simple d4 from white, where c takes d4 and then c takes d4. Another variation of here which black can try here, instead of c takes d4, black can bring out his knight at f6. So here white cannot develop his knight at f3 just yet, as this pawn at e4 will be hanging. And develop your bishop first at d3. Now it really doesn't matter if black develops his knight at c6, putting more pressure on this pawn. Now you can develop your knight um, at f3, protecting it. Later on, white can castle onto the king side. Again, another variation which doesn't look like Sicilian at all. One last variation which I'm going to discuss here is pawn to e5, as black knows white is going to take control of the center, so why not bring his pawn forward and take control of this d4 square. White can develop his knight at f3, attacking onto this pawn. Of course, black cannot and bring his dark square bishop on d6, because it will block the pawn at d7, and that will also make harder for the light square bishop to be developed. So knight c6 is the most logical here, but white can play bishop c4, putting a pressure onto the f7 pawn. Here, black can develop his knight at f6, putting more pressure onto f4. And since it's an Alapin, the knight cannot be developed on c3 because of his own pawn. The knight can go to g5, double attacking the pawn at f7, and queen can also join the attack either from b3 or from f3. So again, all in all, Alapin variation is very strong opening which nullifies the Sicilian effect, and I recommend you try this in your own games. Gauge your opponent to bring his out from his comfort zone. Friends, that's all for today. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. Keep watching. Please comment me for any suggestions, improvements you may like. Till then, take care. Bye bye.